I'm fast losing trust in those who govern us. I don't trust the Treasury and the Bank of England, who have printed money like it's going out of fashion, and for which inflation and the cost of living crisis has been the reward. I don't trust the police, who seem to be more worried about offensive tweets and rainbow cars than solving crime. I don't trust schools, one of which in Brighton is reportedly teaching 7-year-olds that they are not racially innocent. Eh? I don't trust our energy planners. Now, I want to get carbon down, of course, and save the planet. Britain is brilliant on green technology. Bring it on. But the authorities have slapped crippling green levies on fuel, whilst underinvesting in nuclear and ignoring the colossal resources of shale gas, oil and coal beneath our feet, which would allow us to transition sensibly, cost-efficiently and securely to a low-carbon future. Instead, the hypocritical West has simply bought coal, oil and gas from Russia instead, bankrolling Putin's war machine. Well done, everyone. I'm struggling to trust the NHS, whose singular focus on one virus for 2 years may ultimately lead to a waiting list of 14 million people, with GP surgeries literally chained shut during the pandemic, and with more chance of winning the lottery or getting the Christmas #1 than a GP appointment. Too many people have told me on this programme via email that their experience at the NHS has been that if it isn't COVID, they don't care. No reflection, of course, on the amazing frontline staff who are the best of us. But the management, the leadership, not so much. I don't trust a large portion of our media, who pushed just one narrative in the course of this pandemic, that we must mask up and lock down quicker, harder, faster. Where were the questions about mask efficacy and any downsides, especially masking kids? Where were the questions about whether lockdowns might, whisper it, do more harm than good? I now don't trust government scientists, whose obsession with trying to control this virus, which in my view has completely failed, has caused £500 billion worth of debt, a mental health crisis, and illiterate, depressed, and now overweight kids for whom school closures have diminished their life chances. Well done, everyone. Once viable businesses have closed down, lives have been wrecked, and the non-COVID death toll is soaring. So much of this was as a result of an unprecedented set of pandemic policies never tried before, never agreed in advance, never voted for, of course, but all requested by SAGE. Can you understand now why I don't trust them too? For me, SAGE is now a 4-letter word. Whether it's junk modelling predictions of 500,000 deaths at the start, remember that, or 6,000 deaths a day if we don't cancel Christmas. I believe that history will judge many mainstream scientists, who crushed debate, by the way, in the harshest possible terms. In my view, they will sit cheek by jowl with those who insisted 1,000 years ago that the Earth was flat, because they too were mainstream scientists back in the day. I question everything. Top NHS GP Dr. David Unwin, who has reversed the diabetes of scores of his patients and helped them get very slim, will tell you that the government's so-called Eat Well guidelines, with all the carbohydrates recommended and the debatable push for low fat, need a complete rethink and are part of the growing obesity problem. The government's health advice is part of the obesity problem. The experts say. So forgive me for having questions and for not going along with the crowd. This pandemic has taught me one thing: to question everything. Harder at a time when questioning anything gets you criticised, judged, excluded from your social circles, unfriended, and in some cases cancelled. Well, I couldn't care less, because question everything I will continue to do. We all should. It's our job in a democratic, supposedly free society. Of course, sometimes we will be right, and sometimes we will be wrong. But let's talk about it and let's challenge. For too long, we've had so much deference towards people with letters after their name and fancy titles, hosting press conferences in grand Whitehall buildings. And yet here we are, with precious little to show for 2 years of damage ordered by these people. And a death toll from COVID as high, if not higher, than places that had fewer measures. And we've got an economy that we smashed against a brick wall. All thanks to the experts. We've got a police force that's gone from being called institutionally racist, horrific of course, to one which is now becoming institutionally woke. And as with the NHS, it's not about our incredible cops, who are heroes to me and have spent the pandemic policing debatable policies like 10 p.m. curfews in the pub, masks in supermarkets, and arresting old ladies drinking coffee on the beach. Our cops are the best in the world, but the management, the leadership, not so much. Speaking of leadership, how about this corker from our top spy chief at MI6, who tweeted the following: "With the tragedy and destruction unfolding so distressingly in Ukraine, we should remember the values and hard-won freedoms that distinguish us from Putin. None more so than LGBT plus rights." That's right, we've gone from Ukraine to LGBT plus rights in a tweet. This is the chief of the UK Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, Sir Richard Moore. Well, this is a Moore that's absolutely rogered himself, in my view. This senior security official makes Inspector Clouseau look like Inspector Morse, tweeting this rubbish out. Oh, and here's his description of himself on Twitter. It finishes with, wait for it, he, him. Right? This is our top spy chief. Have you heard enough? Now, obviously, I don't have a trillionth of this man's knowledge about national security, but I would humbly suggest that Al-Qaeda won't be checking people's pronouns as they plot the downfall of the West. Ultimately, I think at the root of all of this is a lack of accountability. The institutions of this country don't seem to be answerable to you, the British public, who, of course, pay for all of this. And they seem to follow their own political agenda and dance to their own tune. Well, it's time to change the record. We need a total recalibration of how this country functions post-pandemic so that it serves the public, not the North London chattering classes. These institutions are there to serve the people, not the other way round. And they must get back to doing what we pay them to do, to police the streets, to stop terrorists, to treat sick people, and to educate our kids. You know, maths, English, science, that sort of thing. Look, our institutions have a great legacy, and great work is done across the board. Ours is a great country made up of hard-working, committed people, including old Roger Moore himself, Inspector Clouseau, he, him, Mr. MI6. I'm sure that our spy chief is a clever and decent man. But that tweet has enraged people, and you can understand why. As murderous Russian tanks roll into Kiev and a free democratic country gets swallowed up by a dangerous tyrant, and he wants to tweet about that. All of our public servants have got to raise their game to understand who's in charge, who they work for, and who pays their wages. It's the British people. And mark my words, if our institutions don't choose change, change will be enforced upon them by an angry public. Now, I'm very optimistic about the future of this country, but those who run our society need to wake up, not woke up. For unaccountable, politically motivated bureaucrats, the party's over. This is GB News, and I'm Mark Dolan. He, him, brackets, whatever.